What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HAWGsports.com. Today on the show, we're going to really kind of dive into Arkansas's offense and defense. We had a good talk with both coordinators for Arkansas, so we'll talk a lot about that. We'll talk about this hoops class. I guess hopefully everybody ends up signing today. Right now, there's still one left in KK Robinson, so we'll talk about all that. Danny West is going to jump on with us to talk to the latest in recruiting, all that and more on Hog Sports Live. Obviously, I've got to mention the mustache. You know, I find when I grow a beard, the longer the beard gets, the crazier my thoughts become. With the mustache, it's kind of like authority. I feel like, son, do you know how fast you were driving? I feel like I've got a little bit more authority face. Maybe like you're in trouble a little bit. Quarantine stash. I grew the search stash. It worked well for us. So now we're going with the quarantine stash. Got to mix it up a little bit. You know, I always have, for some reason, like the way the light hits me right here, it looks like, on camera, it looks like I have this long line going down the side of my face. I don't know what it, I guess because the hair is darker there than right here, maybe a little more gray. I can't figure out how to fix that. Anyway, so let's jump into it. The latest signees, Moses Moody, obviously, out of Montverde Academy, originally from North Little Rock, 6'5", 185. And we're waiting on KK Robinson today, and that'll be everybody. They've got Jalen Williams, Devontae Davis, Vance Jackson, Jalen Tate, KK, Moses. KK's deciding today, as I mentioned. Nice-looking class, part of what's going to be a nine new faces if you include the 3 sit ones from last year, the 4 high school kids and the 2 grad transfers. We've got a lot on that on HawgSports.com. You can read up on that. And I want to remind everybody before we get going too much that there is plenty of ways to watch and listen. You can always, of course, watch us streaming live on Facebook Live. Be sure to throw us a thumbs up there if you haven't done so already. Also available on YouTube. Be sure to hit the notifications bell after you hit subscribe. And also on Apple Podcasts, throw us a 5-star review if you haven't done so already. We want our channel to be bumped up anytime people search for Arkansas Razorbacks, and plenty of other ways to watch and listen, of course. Well, plenty of ways to listen: Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, HawgSports.com is $1 for your first month if you want to try us out. Just $1 for your first month. All right. So Moses Moody's inked. Waiting on KK Robinson. Nice-looking class, number 6 ranked recruiting class in the country, just considering, high school and junior college players. They didn't include Vance Jackson or Jalen Tate, who are really nice additions. So far, there's nothing on Isaiah Joe testing NBA waters. He hasn't, aside from Musselman saying he expects it, Joe hasn't come out and said, I'm going to test the NBA waters. So right now, we're just kind of waiting. I think everybody expects him to fully do so. As far as Mason Jones, there was some talk that he could make some kind of formal announcement on whether he's going to return or not at Arkansas. He's already announced that he's testing NBA waters, hasn't signed with an agent, so that still leaves a window open for him to return to Arkansas. It's unlikely, though. It looks like Mason's going to go. And we talked about this a little bit on the show Thursday, but with Mason, he's not going to come back and average 22 points. I think that's unlikely when you consider everybody that's coming in, more help, all those types of things. So he's not going to come in and just average all those points and lead the team in assists, rebounds too, I believe. So it might be his best interest to go, but with Isaiah, there's plenty of things that he could improve on still and be a bigger piece of the puzzle, be a larger focal point for the team, and really, improve his stock. Right now, you see him around 60th on draft boards. So Arkansas is going to be a lot bigger next year, obviously. They still want to play with pace and space. They still want to play with pace, but you could literally see them going, 7'3", 6'9", 6'8", 6'6", 6'5". They could be a really, really big team next year. 6'6", you go with Jalen Tate at the point. 6'5", you go with Moses Moody or Isaiah Joe. 6'9", Vance Jackson. 6'8", who could go? I mean, you could go with several people at the 6'8" range. You could go with Reggie Chaney, Abiyami Iola, Jalen Williams is 6'9", and then 7'3" down low. I mean, you could be really big. It'll be interesting to see how many players they play, because last year it was pretty much 7 guys. I mean, they're going to have a full 13. And depending on what Isaiah Joe does, they may or may not be done with recruiting right now. So, looking ahead all the way to 2022, it's another really solid in-state hoops class. They've offered one in 2021. And in 2022, Joseph Pinion, who I think was just offered by Ole Miss also. He already had a Kansas offer. But he's out of Morrilton, 6'6", 180. Nick Smith out of Sylvan Hills, 6'4", 170. Darian Ford out of Magnolia, 6'4", 194. Little Rock Mills, guard. Javion Guy King, 6'6", 190. And North Little Rock, big man, Khalil Ware, 6'10", 198. Great-looking class. Just like the 2020 class. 2020 class is great inside the state. All right. So we've got some things to talk about as far as this offense and defense. As I said, we spent about, I think it was like 65 minutes on the phone with Kendall Browse and Barry Odom, just kind of talking about everything from what they look for in the quarterback recruiting to what kind of offense, what name this offense is going to be. And I'll say this. I was kind of asking Kendall, like, what do you call this offense? Because we've heard it called the veer and shoot. We've heard it called the spread ISO. And, some of that stuff makes sense, from the background, with Art Browse, and the veer. And then with the spread ISO, I mean, he's trying to spread it out so much that you just you get these one-on-one matchups, wide receivers, a lot of single choice routes where you just know where you're going with the ball because you've got one-on-one because you spread them out so far. So I asked him, what are you going to call this offense? And he says, hopefully productive. So this is the a good name for it that's already taken is the pace and space offense. But it's already taken by Eric Musselman. Maybe it could just be an Arkansas thing because it's about, they're going to go really fast and they're really going to spread it out, pace and space. Makes a lot of sense to call it that. But there are some other ones, we're familiar with Bobby Petrino, the power spread offense, which combines elements of the power run game, more pro-style stuff along with spread elements, hence the name power spread. Bill Walsh had the West Coast offense. Hal Mummy and Mike Leach came up with the air raid. Steve Spurrier had the fun and gun. Chad Morris had the 30% install offense. It's a joke. What did he call his? The two-back, run-oriented, play-action shot offense. That didn't work. Vance Wahlberg has the dribble drive that John Calipari's made so popular. Phil Jackson had the triangle offense. I know y'all watched the Last Dance. I watched both episodes last night. Fantastic start. And if defense is the best offense, then Nolan Richardson has 40 minutes of hell. But he wants to call it productive. We've got a lot of stories like that on HawgSports, but now I want to move into Danny West before we go into more on, what we can expect out of this defense and offense. We're going to get to Danny and let him share a few things, what's going on with recruiting and anything else. For those who aren't familiar with Danny, he is our recruiting writer, our main recruiting writer at HawgSports.com. He's been with us for over a decade and does just a tremendous job. See what he has to say.
Trey Biddy.
Danny West, how's it going, brother?
It's good. Just arguing with people about the LeBron MJ debate on the board.
People are, we can talk about this a little bit because of The Last Dance, but what's your stance on it, Danny? You're a little bit, what are you, 33, 34?
34.
34?
Yeah,
I'm 42.
I'm a LeBron guy, but I'm a LeBron fan by default because I know how to push all the right buttons and get people worked up. I've got a neighbor that won't speak to me right now.
Well, it's probably just because he thinks you're an idiot. It's probably nothing personal, just like that guy's so stupid he thinks just
a lot of facts being dropped on here. No, I like the show, man. I'm I'm a MJ fan. Make no mistake about it. I'm not one of these guys that has to choose one and hate the other.
Right.
I mean, I respect him. I think he's amazing. And I can't wait for next Sunday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to episodes 3 and 4 myself, and I think I can't remember who said it in the documentary, but what I hope that it shows younger people who never had a chance to really watch and experience Jordan and watch highlight clips and stuff like that is just the sense, the vibe of dominance that was just kind of felt throughout the league that everybody knew. There was nobody ever saying, well, it might be this other guy who's the best player in the NBA.
There was no debate back then.
There was
no debate.
Yeah.
And, as a sports fan, I'm glad we have the debate to even talk about. Now, I know you and where you stand on it, and most people will choose MJ, right?
Well, for people like me, it's
out there now.
For people like me, it's not a debate. I don't know what the numbers are that you're pointing to that would indicate that LeBron is better than Jordan when you consider the scoring, the difference in the NBA right now, and a lot of experts would tell you that Jordan would average 10 points higher than his highest scoring season right now because there's no hand checking. I mean, the difference in playing with hand checking versus not is dramatic. I mean, you can just dribble, do whatever you want. Can you imagine
the people better athletes in today's game?
No, there's not.
Oh, okay.
How are there better athletes? I could point you to a very
better, workouts are better, everything's better nowadays. But
no, I could point you, Danny, to a great TED Talk that basically breaks down that notion that the athletes are so much better now, and you can point to things like nutrition's better. Well, I think a lot of scientists will tell you right now that we know the more we find out about nutrition, the less we think we know about it. Athletes aren't getting bigger necessarily. There's a lot of
LeBron's a lot bigger too. He's like 7'6", 390 pounds by now.
Yeah, that's right.
Marcus Elliott.
He keeps getting bigger and bigger. Marcus said that one time. He said LeBron James is 6'9", 285 or something. I said Michael Jordan's 6'7", 250. I mean, it's just like
raising it.
Yeah, but anyway, for me, just growing up in it. I mean, I grew up with Jordan. Elementary school, junior high, college, high school. I mean, I guess it was throughout my youth. So that plays an impact on it. And there are people who tell me like, well, you can't
psychological impact.
Well, people
on that poster and they're proud of it.
People tell me that like I can't get away from it because. That I say that because that's what I grew up with. But I can fully recognize, and I was, a bandwagon 49ers fan because of Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, and those guys, and Joe Montana was the greatest quarterback that ever lived. But I can fully accept and appreciate that Tom Brady has overtaken him. So people who act like I'm, some guy who can't get out of the past, how come I can fully accept that Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all times? And I was also a huge Elway fan, who Elway's not in that conversation, but Joe Montana is, but
see, that's the conversation I use a lot. When they talk about titles, MJ obviously has more titles, twice as many at this point. I mean, is Terry Bradshaw better than John Elway? You know what I mean? Because he had 4.
Right.
Dan Marino never won one. Is Terry Bradshaw better than Dan Marino?
Yes. I never really liked Dan Marino.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
But Brett Favre, John Elway, Peyton Manning. He's better than those 3. Terry Bradshaw now.
Well, that's a different era, a dramatically different era. Basketball has changed, but it hasn't changed that much in the last 30 years.
Man, I don't know. I mean, 30 years ago, they barely had a 3-point line, right?
They had it, though. It was there. I mean, it's changed a lot. I mean, obviously, there's a lot more three-point shooting. The consensus back then was you need to be really, really tall down low. Now everybody wants to shoot threes. But, yeah. Anyway, Danny, I don't know if everybody wanted to hear us recap the Last Dance. I did enjoy Van Pelt breaking it down. I mean, his whole show was breaking down a documentary. I mean, that's just a sign of the times that we're in right now. So recruiting, Danny, what is going on? What is the latest, if you can just kind of give us an overarching idea?
Okay, let's start with basketball. We're waiting on K.K. Robinson today, right? He's going to be the last guy to sign. So at some point today, we're expecting him to send in that paperwork. Of course, you probably already mentioned we're going to hear from Coach Muss.
Yep. Oh, I didn't mention that, but yeah, at 4 o'clock we'll talk to him.
4 o'clock today. So he'll be able to talk at length about Moses and KK, the latest signees.
Mm-hmm.
So still waiting on KK. As far as football recruiting, still list trimming season around here. You got running back Logan Diggs out of Rummel High School. You think about Rummel, they were really good to Arkansas under Brett Bielema. He sent Andre Tolliver, Dwayne Eugene, Briston Guidry. Who else? Derek Munson for a minute there. So Logan Diggs is out of Rummel. He's got a top 10. I think Arkansas is in it. I think they've got a legit shot, but it's still too early. Wide receiver Amari Huggins, a kid out of South Carolina, trimmed it to 15 schools, Trey Biddy.
Nice.
Got a top 15.
Really being exclusive, isn't he?
Yeah, I didn't exactly write a thorough story about the top 15.
Did he also include that he's still open to other options?
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite.
Cut my
line.
list to 15, but I'm still open to others.
Open. So Alabama hit me up, right?
Yeah.
Wide receiver J.J. Jones, coincidentally another wide receiver out of South Carolina. He's got Arkansas in his top 10. Look for J.J. Jones to stay somewhere in that part of the country, to be honest with you, probably at home with the Gamecocks. And then safety Kendall Daniels. Now, he's a 4-star safety out of Beggs, Oklahoma. You ever been to Beggs?
I believe so.
Yeah, I don't believe I have, but that's where he's from.
Maybe I'm just familiar with it.
Yeah, he's got Arkansas in his top group. I think the Sooners, just to try to shoot you straight here, he's got a couple of crystal ball picks already for Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Oklahoma State's obviously done a really good job with him too. So going to be tough to get him out of Beggs, Oklahoma. But Kendall Daniels trimmed his list, and Arkansas is still alive there. But outside of that, a lot of new offers in this past week. I'm sitting here looking at well over a dozen that have been trying to get updated and into our system. But that's pretty much where it's at in terms of recruiting. A little bit slower right now. Obviously, you talked last week about Landon Rogers, the new quarterback commitment. I've got a story this morning on Lucas Coley, kid out of San Antonio, another quarterback that they offered last week. The previous staff actually was recruiting Lucas, 6'1", 203, and he told me that he and Kendall Browse have been talking a lot over the last couple of months here, and Kendall finally pulled the trigger on him last week. So going to be taking 2 quarterbacks. This one might be one to keep an eye on, Trey. Lucas Coley out of Cornerstone Christian down in San Antonio.
Danny West joining us with HawgSports.com, HAWGsports.com. He does most of our recruiting stuff, the large majority of it, and most of that is VIP content. So sign up for $1 right now, and you can read all of that. That's pretty much what's going on in sports. We have some things to talk about here and there, like documentaries, and we've had some interviews with Sam Pittman and the coordinators and Eric Musselman. But really, recruiting is kind of what's keeping us going right now. The Logan Rogers commitment kind of came out of the blue, Danny. Is that a guy? Did you see that coming? Did you see that as a guy? I mean, they were.
No, I did not.
Yeah, that was a surprise, I think, to a lot of us. But when you look at the video of him, I mean, he's very athletic. He looks like he has a good arm, a clean throwing motion. Parkview wasn't exceptionally good last season, but his numbers were pretty good, and he's still really young at just 16 years old. It kind of looks like, and I was talking with Browse about this, and he can't comment specifically on recruits, but I was talking to him about like what they look for in quarterback recruits, and it's so easy to judge arm strength and numbers and things like that. But really, what he looks at, the mental side of it's impossible. It's impossible to tell how a guy's going to handle college life and stuff. But what he looks for above anything else, above speed, arm strength, all that, is production, and if the guy's a winner, and that's a great point, because I mean, if you looked at all those things, you never would have taken Tom Brady. Danny Werfel never would have been, at Florida. So there are a lot of things to take into account. It's fun to get caught up with arm strength and speed and all that stuff, but the bottom line is, how the guy picks apart defenses. Yeah,
and the thing when you talk about being a winner, and they obviously struggled last year at Parkview, but you also have to consider, James Joyner going down with an ACL midway through the season. That's a big loss.
That'll hurt you. The top running back in the state going down.
Yeah, big loss right there. And obviously they still had Aaron Outley to throw to, but yeah, that takes away a lot of your running game, a lot of your offense there. So when I saw him at Springdale, they actually lost that game. Springdale had a pretty miraculous comeback very late in that game.
Mm-hmm.
It was a sloppy game, as I recall. Sitting there with Dudley trying to trudge through that one. It was just a really ugly game there for the longest, but you could tell immediately this kid's got big-time arm potential. And, he looks like $1 million physically. But
6'4", 215.
Yeah, I thought he struggled a little bit with accuracy when I saw him, but there's no doubt about that arm strength. So with a little bit of coaching, I think maybe you've got something here.
Speaking of, Outley and Joyner, Rogers, I mean, what's Parkview doing all of a sudden? Parkview's producing.
Brad Bolding, right?
Yeah,
Brad
suddenly.
Bolding. I mean, you think about Coach Bolding, and he's been really good to us. He had so many there at North Little Rock, and obviously things, turned out the way they did. But here he comes back. He gets that Parkview job, and suddenly he's putting out D1 prospects again.
Yeah.
I don't know if, surely you've got to give the kids a lot of credit. But it's really no coincidence to me either that he's got some heavily recruited kids here. He's a really good coach.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that is part of it, just Coach Bolding being there, and I would expect them to be a lot better this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's Bolding.
Yeah.
Personally, I mean, there's some guys that around the state that just kind of get it done.
That's right.
What else, Danny? What else you got going on in recruiting? And if we had to predict, do you think there's any commitment coming anytime soon? You have a guy that you're keeping an eye on?
It seems like the last two, Trey, they just called the kids up, offered them, and says, hey, we'd like for you to go ahead and commit right now.
And that's a thing, too, Danny, in-state guys. I mean,
it's in-state.
We had somebody talking the other day just about, Arkansas seems like they're kind of lagging in recruiting, but you look across the SEC, there's not like anybody's just raking them in one after another. I mean, it's just the time that we're in. Yes, there's still a lot of activity. People are cutting their list. Offers are being extended and stuff. There's an occasional commitment. But for Arkansas, they have to go a long way. And a lot of these kids haven't visited Arkansas that they're recruiting, whereas, with other programs, they might have come and visited as a sophomore,
That's
and
right.
For Arkansas, it's a totally new staff. And a lot different, and a certain perception after back-to-back 2-win seasons that you have to overcome, and it's important to get them on campus. And, Dallas is 5 hours away, whereas like Auburn, they're recruiting a couple hours inside of, a 2-hour radius for a lot of their guys.
Yeah.
So and Texas A&M, is similar, but those schools aren't just raking in commitments right now.
No, I mean, you look at Alabama. I mean, they're up until last week, they were, I want to say 13th in the conference in the recruiting rankings. Now, you want to tell me they're not going to move up the charts? It's just a slow start for everybody, and I think that's got a lot to do with it, not having those visits. And it's really no surprise to me when I really think about it. Arkansas was sitting there with a very early commit from an in-state guy, Terry Wells, and then it did feel kind of stagnant, like, maybe they need some momentum here. So they go out and offer a Marco Avant, Landon Rogers, and immediately get those guys to jump on board. I mean, you can call it a momentum move, those decisions to offer those guys, but chances are they probably would have come around to offering anyway. I felt like both of them were probably camp guys, especially with Marco. I felt like once he came to camp and ran for them, he's a no-doubter. So, really no surprise that they would try to load up with early guys. And that you could still see it. I think Aaron Outley, as we talked about, the tight end from Parkview, he still got an offer. I'm sure they would love to get him in the boat, as well as Drayden Norwood down here at Fort Smith North Side, 4-star corner. If let's say you start off with 5 in-state commitments, nothing wrong with that at all. And, hopefully at some point you start getting some of these out-of-state guys because, as excited as fans get for the in-state commitments, they really don't get too excited until you go beat a bunch of other schools in the area for an out-of-state guy out of Texas or Oklahoma, right?
Mm-hmm. So, Danny, you were pointing to LeBron James's stats as reasons that he's better than Michael Jordan. And what capacity is that? Where's that coming from?
Okay, let's just run through them if we're going to do this. Career points, obviously, LeBron's played a couple years longer now. Field goal percentage for the career, 3-point percentage, career wins, more assists by 3,665, more rebounds by 2,681. More buzzer beaters is a trendy topic today. It depends on who you look at, how they define a buzzer beater. Is it within 10 seconds, 5 seconds, or like last split second?
I would say the game-winning shot.
Sure, I would too. But, you think about Michael Jordan. Whenever he's started off 1-9 in the playoffs, LeBron had 19 playoff wins after four seasons in Cleveland. MJ had the best coach of all time. LeBron won with Tyronn Lue, and on and on.
Yeah. Do you think that Phil Jackson would have won all those championships without Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Shaquille O'Neal?
Players have a lot to do with it.
A lot.
I don't think MJ
you take the Jerry
won.
Krause, the Jerry Krause idea.
No.
So hey, let me give you.
Fan.
Let me just throw this comparison out to you. LeBron James, 2014-15 season, great season for him, right? Larry Bird, 86-87. Larry Bird averaged 28 points. Bron averaged 25. Bird, 9 rebounds. LeBron, 6 rebounds. Bird, 7.6 assists. LeBron, 7.4 assists. Bird, 52.2%. LeBron, 48.4% field goal. So is Larry Bird better than LeBron James? You take their best seasons?
No,
Larry Bird's better?
Not on my list. I think Larry Bird.
I've just given you all these numbers that prove it. Lesser competition? Get out of here.
That's what I'm going with.
How dare you slam 80s and 90s NBA basketball? How dare you?
Yeah,
you come
just
off.
Because they hacked everybody and knocked everybody senseless, that doesn't mean it was a better game.
Okay. All right.
That's what I'm going with. You asked me. You asked me in what capacity. I gave you my parameters.
Yeah. So Danny's kind of a troll when it comes to this because he likes to get under my skin because it's the obvious answer is Jordan that anybody that watched both play. And I love LeBron. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's probably in the top 3 all time. But one, nah, he's not. One, it's one, and then there's a gap.
I'm going to go find somebody else to mess with about this, Trey.
All right. Appreciate you joining us, man.
You bet.
All right.
See you
Later.
All right, bye.
That's Danny West with a completely inaccurate take on LeBron James and Michael Jordan for those of us who've been around it. So now I want to get into a little bit of this coordinator discussion. I feel like with the mustache, my points are a little more valid also, taken a little bit more seriously with the stash versus Danny being more clean-shaven. I mean, this is like a little bit of a Gruden look with the stash. I mean, that's serious. All right, so where are we? So I mentioned talking about Kendall Browse's offense, like what are you going to call it and stuff. I want to call it productive. We did a long breakdown. This is a VIP article, so anybody, and the reason we do, the VIP stuff, the way I look at it is that's stuff that we put a lot of research into. It's stuff that hasn't happened yet, projection type of stuff based on inside information, whereas our free content is generally stuff that has already happened, stuff that you could possibly get elsewhere. But this was, just something I put a lot of effort into breaking down just where the different offenses were, where, Kendall Browse was offensive coordinator at Baylor. Before that, he was passing game coordinator in a couple of years when they were number 1 overall in total offense and scoring offense. Number 1 in the country in both those categories. It's not really fair to compare. In 2016, they were still really strong when everything was kind of crushing down. And then 2017, you can't compare that, what Baylor was at that point. But you look at what he did at FAU before he got there, and then the years when both he and Lane Kiffin were there, and then when he left, obviously a major uptick the year that Browse was there, and a bit of a drop down, not dramatic drop down after he left because Lane Kiffin obviously is a strong, highly regarded coordinator, but still a lot better when Kendall was there. And then at Houston, there's just no mistaking where Houston was before, where they were when he got there, and then what happened to him after he left. The one anomaly is Florida State. And to say this, let me get these numbers because you look at what he did at Florida State and it's not that impressive. But they did go to a bowl game where they didn't the year before. They also fired their head coach midseason, so that's obviously going to to hurt. Where are the numbers on that? Because I really wanted to go over that. All right, so before he arrived at Tallahassee, Florida State had produced the number 103 ranked total offense in the country and the number 113 scoring offense. That's bad. So last season, they moved up to 59th in total offense and 73rd in scoring offense. So that's not just like, wow, this offense is so explosive, but it's dramatically better than where it was. And you also have to take into account that he was operating this behind an offensive line that ranked 129 out of 130 schools in terms of Pro Football Focus grades. Georgia was second. Arkansas, I believe, was 67th. Missouri, I believe, was 37 to 42, somewhere in that range. I can't remember exactly. I think 42. So Missouri was above average. Arkansas was average. Florida State was atrocious, and Georgia was great on the offensive line. So I think that's where kind of a lot of that comes from. If you look at, where's the next one? 15 Browse. At the FAU, the Owls had the 72nd ranked total offense and the 80th ranked scoring offense. And then with Kiffin and Browse, they had the number 9 ranked total offense in the country and number 8 scoring offense. That's a dramatic increase. And then when he left, it was 14th best total offense and 45th on scoring offense. So a pretty big drop in scoring offense there. And then FAU, before he left FAU for Houston. Before he left FAU for Houston in 2018, see, the Cougars had the 40th ranked total offense before he got there and the 65 ranked scoring offense. And then 2018, while he was there, number 7 ranked total offense and the number 5 scoring offense. And after he left, those numbers dipped to the number 78 total offense and number 51 scoring offense. I mean, those numbers are undeniable. Now, for Arkansas, under Chad Morris, which he claimed was going to be one of the more explosive offenses in the entire country upon being hired the day he was announced. So Arkansas never broke the top 100 in scoring offense or total offense. In the entire country, out of 130 schools, they were never better than 110 in either of those categories in both years. I mean, that's just dramatically poor. So if Arkansas were to take a jump like Florida State did, a little more middle of the pack in both of those, nothing explosive or that impressive, that's still a dramatic increase in production over the 30% install offense. I still never forget Kendall Browse's face when I asked him if they're going to, this is when the spring was still going to be, still slated. When I said, are you going to be able to have the offense installed by the time the season starts? He was like, well, I'd hope so. He just kind of chuckled like, who's this guy? What is he talking about? And I had to clarify myself. I was like, well, the past couple of years, they've only installed 30% because that's all anybody could operate. There's a great article by Charles Power. It's a free story, and this is before Browse left Houston for Florida State. Okay, and it's what you can Google. It's what to expect from a Kendall Browse offense. It's written by Charles Power with 24/7 Sports. It's a long breakdown just on philosophies and alignments and formations. Really good if you like that kind of stuff. It's got some clips, some video clips of, just some of these single choice routes. It's a really, really good article by Charles, and I refer to it a lot when I'm breaking down some of the articles about what he is now. And this was written January 7th, 2019, before he got to Florida State. So it's a good article. Also got a nice one just on what Kendall Browse looks for at quarterbacks. We talked a little bit about that with Danny West. By the way, get your questions in. We're going to answer some questions here. Shoot the breeze. I'm sure there's a lot of last dance topics. As for defense, there's been so much talk. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, the headline of one of these is Arkansas to switch to a 3-2-6 base defense. That's what the players are telling us. I think we're going to go to that. I think that what we've learned now after talking with Barry Odom, and this was a lot of the questions that I had with him, they're going to be very multiple, and I'm not sure that they know exactly what they want to do on defense in terms of what they would call their best defense. And I think that's just mainly a product of not having the guys out there. I mean, you may think that, okay, we've got a lot of safeties. We need to put a lot of safeties and hybrids on the field. But if you're playing, you might say, you know what, we're better on the defensive line than I thought we were. We got more depth here. Some of these guys have really, really improved, So there's all those kinds of things to weigh in, because ultimately what you want to do is get the best 11 players out there, right? And not sacrifice something like just being, atrocious when it comes to stopping the run. And that's been a big topic too. There's all these things they want to get better on, but number one, before anything else, is stopping the big plays. Arkansas gave up a ton of big plays the last couple of years, but that's the number one thing. If you can start by limiting big plays and make them, as Houston Nutt used to say, make them go the long, hard way. If you can make them do that, there's more chances for mistakes, and that's a good start. It's not a great start or a great finish, but it's a good start. So what we're expecting is an even front, a four-man front. And there, like I said, there was talk of the 3-2-6, but and they ran I believe it was a 3-3 stack at Memphis a lot. And it's really, with so much that you do on defense, you can easily make a 3-4 look like a 4-3. And it does a lot of times. You can easily, make a four-man front look like turn it into a bear front. Just an adjustment here and there, moving a guy in and out. So many different things. And, I think the base is, traditionally, like, what we're going to, this is our structure, and everything we do branches off from that, right? This is the structure we run against 21 personnel, which nobody hardly even runs anymore. And it's, it's good for writing a depth chart. People like me, I always ask questions like that. Do you have any specific names for different positions? And, they're going to call the jack, one of the defensive ends, a jack. I guess that's the edge guy, the speed rusher is going to be called the jack. But I'm always, I'm always interested in that. I think our readers like to know that kind of stuff. But they're going to be very multiple on defense. Hopefully, depends on what kind of practice time they get. Hog's still out there recruiting very hard. Talked with Danny about that. I just bring up I usually bring up just a couple of topics here and there that I want to make sure that I hit on, and sometimes we get onto it earlier than I thought. So I'm going to run into your questions now. We've gone about 38 minutes. Usually like to go about 40 something. Got a lot of Woo Pig Suey. Woo Pig Suey from Charlottesville, Virginia, says Ryan Summers. Ryan, R-I-O-N. Not a lot of people spell it that way, but Ryan Rhodes does. Chad Everett says Woo Pig Suey. Isaac Riley says, yes, wasn't sure if you were having a live show today. Thanks for the content and hard work keeping fans enticed. Woo Pig Suey. Appreciate you for tuning in, Isaac. Maxine Ward says Woo Pig Suey from Malvern. First high school game was against Malvern, at Malvern, when I was in 10th grade. And they lined up Madre Hill. We'd held him pretty good the first half. And then I think that it was the first series of the second half, and he went 96 on us, right up the gut. And it was over from there. Jack Robbins says, morning from Cabot, Austin, Trey. Please talk some of the baseball team. This has to be the hardest on them for the potential they had this year. So you're just not going to get a lot of baseball from me. I pour everything I've got into football, basketball as well. And Pete Roulier, who we'll have on the show again coming up here soon, maybe on Thursday, but we'll get him to talk some baseball. He's our primary baseball guy. James Rose says, howdy. Tony Ball says, what's up, T? Zach Freeman says, nice stash. I've never caught the show live. Glad to be here. So the stash is not something I rock normally. In fact, I've only grown a mustache twice. I grew a search stash during the coaching search. This is the quarantine stash. Not that I'm in quarantine, but whatever you want to call it. The stash is on point, bro. Very, very Magnum PI of you. Appreciate that, Jack. Mike McLeod says that stash tray. Mike McLeod says Pinto was trolling with that post. Yeah, I think that kind of came about. Pinto's usually pretty on point with his stuff. Not cool, though, Pinto. We had to get a story ready. Had to get a story ready in our admin for when it happened. Russell McAnally, I'm late. Hello from Judsonia. Jay Frazier says Lorenzo Robinson says Mason is staying and has stood by the statement all weekend. No clue what inside info he would be working with. I'm not sure either. Lorenzo is a former athlete, so maybe he's got some kind of connection. Former Razorback safety. Good player. Mike McLeod says, if Mace came back, wouldn't we have to kick someone off or to make the numbers work? As Nolan Richardson used to say, the numbers will work themselves out some kind of way. Josh Grubb says, thanks for all the videos, Trey Biddy. This is no sports at all. It's killing me. So ready for everything to be over with. Whoopie from Branson, Missouri. I echo all of that. I mean, I was like counting down the days for the Bulls documentary. And normally, like, I would definitely watch it, but like, I watched it live, you know? And I mean, yeah, I mean, that's what we've got. And I even watched Scott Van Pelt's Sports Center afterwards where he spent the whole time breaking down a documentary. Justin Williams says this Arkansas team will surprise some people this season, 7 to 8 wins. I'm on record saying they will win an SEC game. They'll win 3 of the 4 non-conference. Man, it'd be fun to go up there and just shock Notre Dame. I don't think that's happening, but I do think that they are going to win. I will say I do firmly believe that they will win an SEC game. And maybe more than one, but they will win one. They're not going undefeated or winless again in the SEC. Brandon Hawley says, what players is Muss and company looking at for in 2021? I mentioned the in-state crop mostly. Probably should have asked Danny some of that, and maybe we'll get back to that if there's any other guys that are like 5-star types that they're really after. Gil McGarity says the hike and pray offense. Johnny Galbert says, Trey, do you think Jalen Williams is talented enough to take minutes from Chaney and or Henderson? I think it remains to be seen, to be honest with you. I do think that he'll play next year. I think that he has a higher ceiling than Chaney and Henderson. I'll say that. So how long of it does it take? Jack Robbins likes the 30% installed offense. Yeah, I don't know what we called it. Run-oriented, two-back run-oriented, play-action shot offense. Going to be one of the most explosive offense in all the country. Arkansas is going to make a national championship run next year in basketball. I think they're going to be good. Marianne on Drive Time blasted me. They asked, if Arkansas will be a Sweet 16. I don't view this team as a rebuilding team. Now, they may take a minute to get in the groove, figure out who their guys are. They did that last year also. It took a minute for to figure out a couple of guys here and there. But, I mean, I think Arkansas has a chance to be really good next year. And if they get Mason and Isaiah Jack, man. Did I say Mason and Isaiah Jack? Mason and Isaiah back. Man. Wasn't it called left lane hammer down time? Yeah. I mean, he had a lot of names for it. Justin Williams says they won't even play. It's possible. I mean, the way I'm approaching it, guys, is the 2020 season's happening until I'm told it's not. So anytime, every time I write something, somebody's like, yeah, they're not even going to play. Not that that's your voice, Justin, but somebody says something every single time like that. So I'm just, doing what we can. I'm not a medical doctor, man. MJ, hands down, done talking. I mean, anybody who lived through that era understands how good Michael Jordan was, how dominant he was. We can talk about numbers and rings and all that stuff. It's not even close. It is Michael Jordan, and then there's this gap. Anyone else concerned that if Muss continues to bring transfers, it will scare away elite high school recruits? I mean, it didn't in this last class. I mean, he brought in 3 guys, and they also signed 2 grad transfers, and it hasn't scared anybody away. I mean, all these guys think they're going to the NBA, and if you're ranked that highly, a top 100 type of recruit, you probably think that you're the best player in the country or up there. So I don't know. I mean, in this day and age in college basketball, you have to explore both avenues. I thought Musselman put it great that in a comparison with the NBA, that recruiting is draft picks and grad transfers, and transfers are free agents. Bob Curl stopped listening when the dummy started the LeBron pull. Danny's not a dummy. He's just kind of trolling. Justin Williams said, how this dude get this kind of job. Chaz Gray said, you're just wrong, man. Look at the numbers. Replying to Justin. What is Justin talking? Carson Davis says MJ would average 45 to 50 points a game today. I agree. With more threes and free throws. I agree. And no hand checking. I mean, can you imagine you can't touch him? You can't touch him? MJ would average 45 and 50 points a game in today's game with more threes and free throws in the mid-90s. Points per game were in the 90s. Now it's over 111 points a game. He would dominate. I agree. Does Danny West even know sports? Mike Warner says, think Danny West is starting to lose some credibility. Mike Warner says no. Carson Davis says the dude retired in his prime twice, came back at 38 after a 3-year hiatus and still got 23 points a game. LeBron has to take nights off for the road management in his third. That was a great point also. You know, their players take games off. You never heard of Michael Jordan. I mean, he was playing every single game and there was never a point where, I think it was it Ahmad Rashad who said it? I can't remember who said it, but, you know, there was never, Jordan looked at it like there's somebody in the stands who'd never seen me play before. And there was never a game where like, yeah, I went and saw Michael Jordan play, scored 12 points. No, that never happened. You were always getting 20 plus out of Jordan. I'd love to see a game-by-game look at Michael Jordan and LeBron, and you take in the bad times and see who had more bad games. The dude retired in his prime. Let's see. Bron acts like he's been shot anytime he's touched. LeBron's a great player. Again, I still think LeBron is a top 3 all time. I just think there's this big gap between Jordan and the rest of the pack. If Isaiah doesn't go into the draft by tomorrow, does that mean he can't enter? Is that the deadline? I haven't even looked at it, but I know it, when I was saying it, I know it's coming up. Morgan Adam Harris says quarantine stash, Barat voice. Very nice. Who are the starters on the D-line? I think the starters on the D-line will go, I think it'll end up being Coates. If it's an odd front, or it's an even front, then I think you look at Dorian Gerald and Coates, and I think that you probably end up with Coates inside. It's also possible. So I think so let's start on the inside. I think Jonathan Marshall starts, and I think the other guy is a toss-up. I think it could very well be Marcus Miller. It's possible that it could be Isaiah Nichols. I think Coates could end up being in there. You know, he goes about 280 now. So I think Coates could end up maybe being inside. You also got Dorian Gerald, and I think Matteo Soli are probably your starting ends. It could end up being Dorian Gerald and Matteo Soli, or Dorian Gerald and Coates, and then inside Jonathan Marshall. So I think the for sure starters are going to be Dorian Gerald and Jonathan Marshall. And after that, then you've got a mix of a group where it could be Julius Coates, Matteo Soli, Isaiah Nichols, Marcus Miller. And Marcus Miller's kind of my projection guy. It's not really a good answer, Tate Reiser. Larry Brown says, Woo Pig Suey. Tyler Tolbert said, any Hogs getting drafted this weekend? I think McTelvin will get drafted. Mel Kiper, I think, has his number 10 defensive tackle. CJ could. Curl could. Dijon could. All 4 of those guys are like back in. Maybe McTelvin might be the first guy off, more of a guaranteed guy, but I think everybody else is probably 5 to 7 rounds. Nicholas Jones, when is the draft? 25th starts. Nicholas Jones says, has any of the Fab Four signed yet? They've all signed except for KK, who is signing today. Rich Stagg says, hi from Apple Valley, California. Hi, Rich. Michael Kevin Matheny II says, Morris offense left lane sputter out. Yep. The shoulder with the blinking lights, the emergency blinkers. Chase Hogan Jones says, getting Browse and Odom to stay would be awesome, but man, I'm excited we got him. Yes. I mean, you couldn't have made, really, when you consider the guys that are out there and available, I don't know if you could have made 2 better coordinator hires, at least on paper. Chase Hogan Jones says, I'm also excited about our basketball team next season. I bet they'll just get better as the season goes on. We have added depth. Chase says, also a 90s kid, and Bulls were our heroes. I mean, I remember, because I lived in North Little Rock in elementary school and Sheridan after that, but I remember in North Little Rock just getting WGN out of Chicago. And, I mean, you just get basically all the Bulls games. So you were really exposed to it. That's where I became a Bulls fan. I would claim the Bulls as my team for NBA. And it's because of that, because of the Jordan era, which is true of basically anybody who's a Bulls fan anyway. They don't have really much history before that. Chase Hogan Jones says, how he could jump and the three-point line to dunk was so electric. So Michael Jordan has the highest recorded vertical jump in the history of the NBA. Still stands. And I will also point, because there is this argument that among people that the athletes are so much better now than they used to be. And it's not really true. Now, equipment and stuff like that has played a big role. When you consider there's this great TED Talks, and I wish I could find it, but maybe if you go on YouTube and you search for athletes today versus tomorrow, TED Talks, Jesse Owens, something like that. But when you compare Jesse Owens to Usain Bolt, when you compare those two people, and you take into the fact that Jesse Owens basically had to dig holes for starting blocks and ran on embers, versus this state-of-the-art surface that Bolt runs on, and these lighter shoes, versus the leather, which were the leather Adidas or whatever that Jesse Owens ran on. When you consider all of these things, and you factor in just the springiness of the track and all that stuff, the difference is, it's ridiculously small. The difference in Bolt versus Jesse Owens, or Bolt versus even Carl Lewis, some of these other great sprinters. And in basketball, like you say, we're getting taller. Really, we're just getting more spread out. The odds of you knowing somebody who's under 30 years old and is 7 foot tall, it's like the odds of them being in the NBA is extremely high. So it's a great TED Talks just on, are we really getting better? And you also look at, they looked at cycling, and there's this huge advancement in bikes and other things, performance enhancing things, that also, just shows that, the athletes aren't, they're not just like these dramatically better cyclists. It's a very interesting look, because the perception is that there's all this stuff going on, that athletes are just somehow, way better than they were back in the day, and it's really just not true. And if it is true, it's a pretty small gap. Any truth on the rumor of Mason Jones coming back? No rumor yet. Chad Young says Bulls and Cubs. It was cool with Scottie Pippen being from Hamburg, but they always said Central Arkansas. I wonder why he said that on the starting lineup and not Hamburg. Because I don't know. This is college. Arkansas was well represented in the documentary. And I would say besides Chicago and Illinois and North Carolina, Arkansas was the most represented state. You had Joe Klein on there, Sidney Moncrief was on there, and Scottie Pippen, all three interviewed. Brian Wharton says, love watching your shows from Hawaii, and I appreciate that, Brian. And I want to remind anybody that if you want to tune into the show, then we usually run it on Mondays and Thursdays. Sometimes do an emergency podcast if there's breaking news or something like that. But usually the show you can catch on Mondays and Thursdays in a variety of ways. Facebook Live, YouTube. You can watch both shows there. If you haven't thrown us a thumbs up on either of those outlets, do so now. Share the content with somebody you think might like it also. And on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe and the subscribe and notifications bell so you're notified anytime we upload a new video. On Facebook, hit the follow button. Also on Apple Podcasts, be sure to throw us a 5-star review if you like the content and say something nice about it. We certainly appreciate that. And plenty of other outlets on podcasts, basically anywhere you find your favorite podcast. Sign up at HawgSports.com for $1 your first month. I want to thank Danny West for joining us. I want to thank you guys for your questions and for tuning in. Certainly wouldn't be able to do the show without you guys. And to all of our HawgSports.com subscribers, really appreciate you and hope you're enjoying the content that we're delivering during the pandemic. All right, everybody. That's the show for today. Appreciate you all joining us. Thanks to Danny West for joining us. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.